The laughter echoed through the room like shards of glass, cutting into my soul as I held the pen in my trembling hand. There I was, standing in the middle of our family's grand Christmas party, the air thick with the scent of pine from the towering tree and the warm spice of mulled wine simmering on the stove. Fairy lights twinkled overhead, casting a soft glow on the faces around me, faces I had come to know as my own kin through marriage. But in that moment, they felt like strangers, their eyes gleaming with a cruel amusement that made my stomach churn. My husband Mark stood beside me, his arm loosely draped around my shoulders as if this were just another festive toast. In his other hand, he held the divorce papers, crisp and official, the ink still fresh from the printer upstairs. "Sign it, Sarah," he said, his voice low but steady, laced with that familiar charm that once made my heart flutter. Now, it just twisted the knife deeper. I could feel the weight of our unborn child pressing against my ribs, a gentle kick reminding me of the life we had created together, or so I thought. Tears blurred my vision, hot and unrelenting, as I glanced around the room. His mother, Evelyn, sipped her champagne, her lips curled in a smirk. His sister, Lisa, let out a giggle, covering her mouth with manicured fingers. Even his father, usually the quiet one, chuckled softly, shaking his head as if this were some elaborate holiday prank. "Why now?" I whispered, my voice barely audible over the carols playing in the background. The pen hovered over the line, my hand shaking so badly I could hardly grip it. The room seemed to spin, the clink of glasses, the rustle of wrapping paper under the tree, the faint smell of roasted turkey from the kitchen. They were all watching, waiting, their laughter bubbling up again like a wave crashing over me. I signed it. The scratch of the pen on paper was the loudest sound in my world, sealing the end of what I had believed was forever. As I handed the papers back, Mark's family erupted into full applause, toasting with their glasses raised high. 2 new beginnings. Someone cheered. I stood there, pregnant and broken, wondering how love could turn so cold under the warmth of Christmas lights. But to understand how I ended up there, in that humiliating spotlight, I have to take you back to the beginning, back to the days when everything felt right. When the cracks were just whispers I chose to ignore. Our life together started like so many others, in the quiet rhythm of everyday joys. Mark and I met 5 years ago at a mutual friend's barbecue, the kind where the grill smoke hangs heavy in the air and laughter flows as easily as the cold beer. He was charming, with that easy smile and those deep brown eyes that seemed to see right through to my heart. I was working as a teacher then, shaping young minds in a bustling elementary school, coming home each day with chalk dust on my sleeves and stories of little victories. Mark was in finance, always sharp in his suits, but he had a softness about him that drew me in, a way of listening that made me feel truly heard. We married 2 years later in a small ceremony by the lake, the water lapping gently at the shore as we exchanged vows under a canopy of blooming cherry trees. His family was there, of course, Evelyn with her impeccable pearls, Lisa with her bubbly energy, and his father George offering a firm handshake and a rare smile. They welcomed me warmly enough, or so it seemed. Evelyn even pulled me aside that day, her hand on my arm, and said, "You're good for him, dear. Keep him grounded." I believed her. I wanted to. Our home was a cozy 2-story in the suburbs, with a garden I tended on weekends, roses climbing the fence, the earth rich and loamy under my fingers. Mornings were my favorite. The sizzle of bacon in the pan, the aroma of fresh coffee brewing as Mark shuffled into the kitchen in his robe, kissing my forehead before burying himself in the newspaper. "What's the plan today, love?" he'd ask, his voice still husky from sleep. We'd talk about nothing and everything, the latest book I was reading, his big presentation at work, dreams of starting a family, and then the pregnancy. It happened naturally, just as we'd hoped. I remember the day I told him I placed the positive test on his pillow wrapped in a tiny ribbon. He came home late from the office, tie loosened, but when he saw it, his face lit up like the 4th of July. He scooped me up, spinning me gently in the living room, his laughter warm against my ear. "We're going to be parents," he whispered, his hand resting on my still flat belly. That night, we lay in bed, the sheets soft and cool, planning names and nursery colors. Evelyn called the next day, her voice over the phone laced with excitement. "A grandchild. Oh, Sarah, this is wonderful. We'll have to plan a proper family celebration." Life felt full, grounded in those small rituals. Family dinners at his parents' house every Sunday, where the table groaned under platters of pot roast and mashed potatoes, the clatter of silverware mixing with easy conversation. Lisa would tease Mark about his childhood antics. George would share stories from his days in the army, and Evelyn would fuss over the desserts, her apron dusted with flour. I fit in, or at least I thought I did, helping in the kitchen, laughing at the right moments, feeling the warmth of belonging. But families are like old houses. They have hidden drafts you don't notice until the wind picks up. Mark's job demanded more hours as he climbed the ladder, leaving me alone in the evenings with my growing belly and a stack of baby books. I'd rub lotion on my skin, feeling the stretch and pull, the quiet miracle inside. He'd come home exhausted, collapsing on the couch with a sigh, his phone buzzing with late-night texts from colleagues or, so he said. I trusted him. Why wouldn't I? Our love was built on that foundation, solid as the oak table where we shared our meals yet. As the months passed, those Sunday dinners began to shift ever so slightly. Evelyn's compliments felt a tad sharper, like you're glowing, dear. But mine, the weight it's hard to lose after. Lisa would glance at my ring, the simple band Mark had chosen, and say things like, you know, Mark always had an eye for the finer things. I'd brush it off, chalking it up to family quirks. Mark reassured me too, his hands squeezing mine under the table. They're just protective, he'd murmur on the drive home, the car humming along the dark roads. They love you. Looking back, those were the first whispers of doubt, faint as the rustle of leaves before a storm. But I ignored them. Focusing on the nursery, we painted together a soft blue, like the sky on a clear datha crib assembled with care. The mobile of stars dangling above. Life was good, wasn't it? Until the clues started piling up, one subtle shift at a time. It started with the phone. One evening in early November, I came home from a prenatal checkup, my feet swollen and my back aching in that deep, constant way only pregnancy brings. The house was quiet, the late afternoon light slanting through the kitchen windows in long golden bars. Mark's coat was slung over the chair, his briefcase open on the counter, unusual for him. He was always so tidy. I called out his name softly, but there was no answer. Then I heard the shower running upstairs. His phone buzzed on the counter beside a half-eaten apple. I didn't mean to look. Truly, I didn't. But the screen lit up again, and the preview of the message caught my eye before I could turn away. Can't wait for tonight. We're the red one. See? My heart gave a strange little lurch, the way it does when you miss a step on the stairs. See who was see? A colleague, maybe. A client. I told myself that as I set my purse down, rubbing slow circles over my belly to calm the sudden flutter inside. Mark had female coworkers. He'd mentioned a Caroline in marketing, a Cassandra on his team. It could be innocent. A team dinner, a holiday party planning thing. But the kiss emoji sat there like a tiny accusation when he came downstairs. Hair damp and smelling of his cedarwood body wash, he kissed my cheek and asked about the appointment. I smiled, told him everything was perfect. The baby's heartbeat was strong, measuring right on track. He grinned, pressed his palm to my stomach, and I let the warmth of that moment push the message aside. We ate lasagna that night, the cheese bubbling and golden, and watched an old movie on the couch with my feet in his lap. He rubbed them gently, thumbs working the arches until I sighed. Everything felt normal again. I didn't mention the text, but doubt, once invited in, is a quiet house guest. It doesn't slam doors. It just lingers. A week later, I noticed he started taking his phone into the bathroom when he showered. He'd never done that before, and the late nights at the office stretched longer texts saying traffic was bad, or a client needed hand-holding through a deal. I'd wait up sometimes the house too still, the refrigerator humming in the dark kitchen while I folded tiny onesies at the table. When he came in, he'd smell faintly of cold air and something floral I didn't recognize. Not my perfume. Not his mother's rosewater. I began making excuses to check his phone when he slept. I hated myself for it. The guilt sat heavy in my chest each time I picked it up, thumb hovering over the passcode hour wedding date. Still, most nights there was nothing, deleted threads or mundane work emails. But one night, close to Thanksgiving, I found a chain of messages with a contact saved simply as C. They weren't explicit, not exactly, but they were intimate in a way that made my throat close. Thinking about last weekend, I wish I could kiss you right now. Tell her you're working late again. My hands went ice. I sat on the edge of the bed in the dark, the glow of the screen, the only light, reading and rereading until the words blurred. Mark breathed evenly beside me, one arm flung over the pillow. I wanted to shake him awake, demand answers. But fear stopped me, fear of what those answers might be. Fear of shattering the fragile peace we still had with a baby on the way. Instead, I put the phone back exactly as I'd found it and lay awake until dawn, staring at the ceiling fan turning slow circles. The next Sunday dinner at Evelyn's was torture. I watched every interaction, every glance. Lisa mentioned a new woman Mark had brought to the office holiday planning committee. Claire, I think her name was. So stylish. Evelyn laughed lightly and said, Mark always did appreciate elegance. George just nodded over his roast beef. I smiled until my cheeks hurt, passing the gravy, asking about their garden plans for spring. Inside, I was cataloging every word, every tone. Mark squeezed my knee under the table at one point, his thumb tracing a small circle the way he did when he sensed I was anxious. You okay, babe? He whispered while the others talked about politics. I nodded, swallowed the lump in my throat, and said I was just tired. He kissed my temple, and for a moment I wanted so badly to believe it was all in my head, but the clues kept coming, small and relentless. A lipstick stain on a collar I found in the laundry basket, deep berry. Not my shade. A receipt in his coat pocket for a hotel bar downtown, dated a night he'd said he was at a client dinner. Late night calls he took in the garage, voice low, door closed. And always the phone face down now. Or tucked quickly away when I entered the room. I started confiding in my sister Rachel over quiet cups of tea at her place. She listened without judgment, her hand over mine as I cried silent tears. "You need to confront him, Sarah," she said gently. "Before the baby comes, you deserve the truth." But I was terrified. 8 months pregnant, emotional, exhausted. What if he denied it? What if he left? What if the family I'd married into turned against me? So I waited. I watched. I told myself I was gathering proof, protecting myself and the baby. But really, I was just delaying the pain. Then came the Christmas party invitation from Evelyn, hand-delivered, cream cardstock with gold lettering. Our annual family gathering, it read. "We're so looking forward to celebrating the newest little one on the way. Mark insisted we go. It'll be good for you to get out," he said, rubbing my lower back as we stood in the kitchen. "Mom's been planning it for weeks." I agreed, because saying no would have raised questions I wasn't ready to answer. I chose a simple red maternity dress that still made me feel pretty, did my hair, even put on the pearl earrings he'd given me for our anniversary. In the car on the way over, he held my hand and talked about names again, how he liked Olivia for a girl, Benjamin for a boy. His voice was warm, familiar. I almost let myself hope I'd imagined everything. We arrived at the house aglow with lights, the driveway lined with luminaries. Carols spilled out when the door opened, and Evelyn hugged me carefully around my belly. "You look radiant, dear," she said, but her eyes flicked over me quickly, as if measuring. Lisa squealed and touched my stomach without asking. George offered me sparkling cider. Everything seemed festive. Normal. Until Mark led me into the living room, his hand firm on my elbow, and I saw the stack of papers waiting on the coffee table beside the eggnog. Divorce papers. My name is already typed in neat, black font. And that's when the laughter began. The room seemed to tilt as I stared at those papers. The words "petition for dissolution of marriage" swimming before my eyes. My breath caught in my throat, a sharp, painful hitch, and I reached out a hand to steady myself on the arm of the sofa. The fabric was rough under my palm, a small anchor in the storm. "What is this?" I managed, my voice a whisper, though it cut through the chatter like a knife. The carols kept playing, merry and oblivious. The scent of cinnamon candles cloying now, too sweet against the bitterness rising in my mouth. Mark's face was calm, almost sympathetic, as he picked up the stack and held it out to me. "Sarah, we've talked about this. It's time, talk about this." My mind raced back. Had there been hints? Those quiet evenings where he'd stare at his phone instead of me, the way he'd pull away when I reached for him in bed. But divorce? No, never. I shook my head slowly, tears welling up as I looked at him. "No, Mark, we haven't. What's going on? Is this about?" "About her?" The word slipped out before I could stop it, raw and accusing. His eyes flickered just for a second, and that was all the confirmation I needed. Evelyn stepped forward then, her champagne flute still in hand, the bubbles fizzing softly. "Oh dear, let's not make a scene. Mark's found someone who truly understands him. Claire's such a lovely girl. From a good family, you know." Her tone was matter-of-fact, as if discussing the weather, but there was a gleam in her eye, a satisfaction that made my skin crawl. Claire, see, the pieces clicked into place with a sickening snap. The texts, the late nights, the floral scent. I turned to Mark, my voice breaking. How long have you been with her?" He sighed, running a hand through his hair, the gesture so familiar it hurt. "A few months. It wasn't planned, Sarah, but with the baby coming, I realized I couldn't keep pretending. We're not right for each other anymore." Pretending. The word echoed in my head. Our vows, our home, our child. Pretending. Lisa chimed in, her voice light and bubbly, like this was gossip over brunch. "Come on, Sarah, you must have seen it coming. Mark needs someone on his level, ambitious. You know, Claire's in-law, top of her class. And honestly, with your background," she trailed off, waving a hand vaguely, but the implication hung heavy. "My background, a teacher from a modest family, no old money or connections like theirs." George cleared his throat from his spot by the fireplace, the logs crackling behind him. "It's for the best, girl. Clean break now, before the kids hear. We'll take care of things. Take care of things." As if our marriage was a spilled drink to mop up, I felt the baby kick again, hard this time, and I pressed a hand to my side, drawing a shaky breath. The tears fell freely now, hot tracks down my cheeks, smudging my mascara. "You all knew." I looked around the room at the aunts and uncles, cousins I'd baked cookies for, the ones who'd sent baby shower gifts. Their faces were a mix, some averted eyes, others nodding along with Evelyn. This party, it was a setup. Mark nodded, his expression softening just a touch. Mom thought it would be easier this way. Everyone here, no drawn-out fights. Sign, and we can all move on. You'll get a fair settlement enough for you and the baby. Easier. The word burned. I snatched the papers from him, flipping through them with trembling fingers. Assets divided. Custody outlined weekends for him. Of course. And there buried in the legalese. A clause about the house, already in escrow. Our home, sold without my knowing. You sold our house. My voice rose, cracking on the last word. The laughter started then, low at first, Lisa snickering behind her hand, Evelyn's lips twitching. Even Mark's mouth quirked, as if this were absurd. Oh, honey, Evelyn said, her voice dripping with false pity. That house was in Mark's name from his inheritance. It's not yours to keep. But don't worry, we've arranged a nice little apartment for you downtown. Practical. I confronted Mark directly, stepping closer, the papers crumpling in my fist. Look at me. Tell me why. After everything, the vows, the baby, was it all a lie? He met my eyes, and for the first time I saw the detachment there, cool and final. It wasn't a lie at first. But Claire, she gets me. She's exciting. You and I, we're just comfortable. And with the promotion coming, I need a partner who fits that world. His words landed like blows, each one stripping away the illusions I'd clung to. And the baby, I whispered, my hand protective over my belly. We'll co-parent civilly. He glanced at his watch. As if this were a meeting running long, the laughter swelled against someone in the back, murmuring, "Poor thing, so dramatic." I felt exposed, raw, like a wound laid bare under bright lights. But in that humiliation, something shifted inside me. The shock gave way to a cold clarity. I wouldn't beg. Not here, not in front of them. With a steadying breath, I smoothed the papers on the table and signed. The pen scratched, final and irrevocable. As I straightened, handing them back, the applause broke out, claps and cheers, glasses clinking. To Mark and Claire. Lisa toasted and the room echoed it. I turned away, weaving through the crowd toward the door, my coat forgotten, the cold night air a slap as I stepped outside. Snowflakes drifted down, soft and silent, melting on my hot cheeks. I walked to the car, keys shaking in my hand, and drove away from that house of lights and lies. But this wasn't the end. Not yet. In the quiet of that drive, tears drying on my face, a resolve took root. They thought they'd broken me. They were wrong that night. Alone in a motel room on the edge of town, the only place I could think to go with cash from my purse, I sat on the stiff bed. The faint hum of the vending machine outside my door, the only company. The room smelled of stale coffee and cheap air freshener. The fluorescent light buzzing overhead as I cradled my belly, whispering apologies to the life inside. "I'm sorry, little one," I murmured, my voice thick with unshed tears. "I'll make this right." Sleep didn't come easy. Flashes of the party replayed in my mind, the laughter, the toasts, Mark's detached gaze. By morning, the hurt had hardened into something sharper. Determination. I couldn't let them win like this. Not with a child depending on me. I needed a plan, something smart, not fueled by rage. Revenge wasn't my style, but justice? That I could pursue first. I called Rachel. Her voice on the phone was a lifeline, steady and fierce. "Come here now," she said without hesitation. "We'll figure this out." I drove to her apartment, the roads slick with melting snow, my hands gripping the wheel until my knuckles whitened. She met me at the door with a hug that enveloped me, her sweater soft against my cheek. Over herbal tea chamomile steaming in mismatched mugs. We talked. I showed her the photos I'd snapped of the divorce papers on my phone before signing. The clauses about the house, the assets. "They're hiding something," Rachel said, her eyes narrowing as she scrolled. "The house was in his name, but you contributed to the mortgage. And selling it without notice? That's not right. She worked in real estate, knew the ins and outs. Let me make some calls." While she did, I reached out to a lawyer, a quiet recommendation from a friend at school. Ms. Harlan answered on the second ring, her voice crisp and professional over the line. I explained in halting sentences, the betrayal spilling out. "Can they do this?" I asked, my freehand tracing patterns on Rachel's kitchen table, the wood cool and smooth. "Possibly not," she replied. "If there was marital property involved or if fraud's at play, bring what you have. We'll review." We set a meeting for the next day. As I hung up, a small spark of hope flickered, fragile, but I needed more. Proof of the affair, something to leverage in court. I thought back to the texts, the receipts. My laptop was still at the house, but I had access to our shared cloud account. Sitting at Rachel's desk, the cursor blinking expectantly, I logged in. Files popped up: tax, documents, photos from our honeymoon. And there, in a folder labeled work, hidden among spreadsheets, emails, dozens of them between Mark and Claire, dates going back 6 months, plans for weekends away, whispers of love, even discussions about after the divorce. One email made my blood run cold. Claire writing, "Your mom says the party's the perfect time. Get her to sign and we're free." Evelyn's involvement laid bare. Attachments, 2 photos of them together, her in that red dress from the texts. I saved everything. Screenshots, timestamped, my fingers flying over the keys. Rachel came back then, phone in hand. The house sale. It's to Claire's father. Some under-the-table deal for Mark's promotion, conflict of interest, maybe even fraud if they undervalued it to avoid taxes. Her contact at the county records had pulled strings. We pieced it together over sandwiches. She insisted I eat ham and cheese. The bread's soft, though it tasted like ash. Armed with this, I confronted Mark the next day. Not at the house, I wasn't ready for that battlefield. Instead, a neutral coffee shop downtown, the aroma of espresso grounding me as I waited at a corner table. He arrived late, looking harried, his tie slightly askew. "Sarah," he said, sliding into the seat opposite, his voice low. "This doesn't have to be messy." I met his eyes. Steady now. "It already is. I know about Claire, the emails, the house deal, all of it." His face paled just a touch, but he recovered quickly, leaning forward. "Look, we can settle this quietly. Sign the papers properly." "I already did." I interrupted, my voice. But I'm contesting. My lawyer's reviewing everything. Fraud, Mark. Adultery clauses in our prenup, remember that, and involving your family. That's low, even for you." He shifted, glancing around at the other patrons, sipping lattes, their conversations a murmur. "Mom was just helping. Claire's dad owns the firm. It's a business that screws me over." I leaned in, my hand flat on the table. "I'm not walking away with nothing. Not for me, for our child." We talked or argued in hushed tones for an hour. He denied, deflected, then offered more in the settlement. "Fine, keep the car. Extra support," but I held firm, citing the evidence. By the end, he looked defeated, promising to talk to the lawyers. As he left, the bell over the door jingling, I felt a weight lift, not fully, but enough to breathe. Back at Rachel's, I started packing my life into boxes she'd scavenged from work. Clothes, books, the baby things I'd bought. Each item is a memory, but also a step forward. I called my principal next, explaining vaguely about family issues, requesting maternity leave early. Her sympathy was genuine, a balm. And Evelyn. I didn't confront her directly, not yet, but I sent a single text. "I know what you did. We'll handle this in court." Her reply came quickly. "Don't be foolish, dear." It only fueled me. In those days, action became my anchor. Therapy sessions booked, a small apartment leased in my name using savings they'd overlooked. Friends rallied, meals delivered, shoulders to cry on. The baby kicked more, as if sensing the shift. And I'd talk to them in quiet moments, promising strength. It wasn't revenge. It was reclaiming what was mine: dignity. Future, truth. The unraveling began quietly, like a thread pulled from a sweater. But once it started, it spread through our circles with a momentum I hadn't anticipated. I didn't seek the spotlight, far from it. My focus was on protecting myself and the baby, building a case with Ms. Harlan that was airtight, based on facts, not fury. But secrets like theirs don't stay buried when the ground shifts. It started at Mark's workplace. Claire's father owned the firm, a sleek financial consultancy downtown where glass walls reflected the city's hustle. Mark's promotion hinged on that house deal, a quid pro quo, undervalued sale in exchange for a corner office. Rachel's contact had tipped off a friend in ethics compliance anonymously. A simple email with public records attached. No names from me, just the facts, letting the system do its work. A week later, whispers reached me through mutual friends. An internal investigation launched. Quiet at first. Mark called me then, his voice tight over the phone as I sat in my new apartment, unpacking boxes amid the faint scent of fresh paint. "What have you done?" he demanded, the background noise of traffic suggesting he was pacing outside. "I told the truth," I replied calmly, folding a baby blanket, soft cotton embroidered with stars. "If it's clean, you've nothing to worry about." He hung up, but the fallout came swift. The promotion stalled, then reversed. Claire was reassigned, her father's influence backfiring in memos about conflicts of interest. Word spread through the office, grapevine emos leaked, rumors of favoritism. Mark's colleagues, once chummy, distanced themselves. Lunches alone, projects reassigned. He wasn't fired, but the shine was gone. His reputation tarnished in that cutthroat world where trust is currency. The family felt it next. Evelyn prided herself on her social standing: bridge clubs, charity galas, the kind where pearls and pedigrees mattered. I didn't spread the story. It spread itself. A cousin at the party, uncomfortable with the cruelty, confided in a friend over coffee. From there, it rippled whispers at the country club about the divorce ambush. The pregnant wife humiliated amid toasts. Evelyn's invitations dwindled. A seat on the gala committee quietly withdrew. She called me once, her voice quavering through the receiver. "This is ruining us, Sarah. Can't we settle privately?" I paused, stirring soup on the stove, the aroma of carrots and thyme filling my small kitchen. "You made it public first, Evelyn. At your party?" She went silent, then clicked off. No apology, but the consequence was there. Isolation in her big house, George retreating further into his silence. Lisa's bubbly posts on social media turning sparse in our community. The school where I taught became a quiet battleground of support. Colleagues knew Bit's maternity leave extended, vague mentions of personal issues. But when a parent, whose husband worked with Mark, overheard details at a dinner party, it filtered back. Sympathy cards arrived in my mailbox. Handwritten notes of encouragement. "You're stronger than you know." One read. The principal pulled me aside during a visit to collect lesson plans, her hand warm on my arm. "If you need references or time, we've got you." No judgment, just quiet solidarity that bolstered me through the lonely nights. Even the extended family fractured. Mark's aunt, a kind woman who'd always sent homemade jams, reached out via email. "I was appalled," she wrote. "That's not how we treat family." She offered to testify if needed. Her words a small validation that not all were complicit. Holidays loomed. Christmas passed in quiet reflection at Rachel's. A simple tree with lights that didn't mock me. Mark's family gathering, I heard through the grapevine, was subdued, absences noted, laughter forced. The legal consequences mounted steadily. Ms. Harlan filed motions, presenting the emails, the house records. The judge, a stern woman with wire-rimmed glasses, frowned during the preliminary hearing. "This reeks of premeditation," she said. Her gavel, a punctuation mark. The divorce was contested. Assets frozen, pending review. Mark's settlement offer ballooned half. The house proceeds full health coverage for the baby. Alimony beyond the minimum. Not out of generosity, but necessity. Claire faded from the picture. Their affair exposed in depositions where lawyers probed with clinical precision. Socially, Mark bore the brunt. Friends we'd shared drifted my way, invites to baby showers, check-ins over tea. He complained in mediation, his lawyer arguing stress. But the mediator's eyes were unsympathetic. "Actions have ripples," she said mildly, shuffling papers with a soft rustle. Through it all, I kept my dignity. No public rants, no vengeful posts. I journal instead, late at night with a cup of decaf, the pen gliding over pages as I processed the pain. Therapy helped 2 sessions where I unpacked the betrayal, the laughter, emerging lighter each time. The baby grew, ultrasounds showing tiny fingers. A steady heartbeat that echoed my own resolve. Justice wasn't about destruction, it was balance restored. They faced the mirror of their choices, the community reflecting back disapproval. And in that I found space to heal, one measured step at a time. The months that followed were a quiet rebuilding, like tending a garden after a storm clearing debris, planting seeds, waiting for growth under uncertain skies. I moved into my apartment fully, a modest 2-bedroom with sunlight streaming through east-facing windows each morning. The walls were bare at first, echoing with the sound of my footsteps on the hardwood floors, but I filled them slowly. A crib in the corner, assembled with Rachel's help, its white slats sturdy and promising. Soft curtains in pale yellow, billowing gently in the breeze. A rocking chair by the window where I'd sit with herbal tea, steam curling up as I planned. Labor came early one April morning, the pains sharp and insistent as rain pattered against the panes. Rachel drove me to the hospital, her hands steady on mine during contractions, whispering encouragement like a mantra. Mark was notified as per the agreement, but he arrived late, lingering in the doorway with a bouquet of wilting daisies. "I'm here," he said awkwardly, but I focused on the nurses' calm voices, the beeps of monitors, and the cool cloth on my forehead. Our daughter arrived with a cry that filled the room, tiny and fierce, her skin pink and warm against my chest. I named her Graca, reminder of what I hoped to find again. Mark held her briefly, his eyes softening for a moment, but the distance was there, a chasm we no longer bridged. He left soon after, promising visits, and I let him go without protest. In that sterile room, surrounded by the scent of antiseptic and new life, I felt a profound peace. She was mine to protect, to love without conditions. The divorce finalized in May, the courtroom hushed, sunlight filtering through high windows onto polished wood. Ms. Harlan presented our case, methodically the emails printed and bound. The house appraisal showing undervaluation, testimonies from neutral parties about the affair's timeline. Mark's lawyer argued for mitigation, but the judge ruled in my favor, full custody with supervised visits for him. A fair share of assets, including proceeds from the house resale. Child support structured and enforceable. Evelyn sat in the back row, her face pinched. George beside her, silent as ever. Lisa didn't show. As the gavel fell, a soft echo in the quiet space, I exhaled a breath I'd held for months. Not triumph, but closure. Mark adapted, in his way. Visits started weekly. Awkward at first, him bouncing Grace on his knee in my living room. The clock ticking audibly, but over time they softened. He brought toys, read board books in a halting voice. We communicated via app, civil and brief, focused on her. Claire vanished from his life, or so rumors said, a casualty of the scandal. He took a lateral job at another firm, the promotion a distant memory. In rare moments of candor he'd admit regret, his voice low over coffee during handoffs. I messed up, he said once, stirring sugar endlessly. I nodded but didn't absolve. Forgiveness came slowly, not for him, but for my too. Release the bitterness that could poison Grace's world. Evelyn reached out tentatively after the birth. A card arriving with a knitted blanket, soft wool in pastel blues. For my granddaughter, it read, no mention of the past. I didn't respond immediately, weighing the olive branch against the wounds. But, for Grace's sake, I allowed a visit months later, supervised. In a park where birds chirped overhead and leaves rustled underfoot. Evelyn held her granddaughter with trembling hands, tears in her eyes. She's beautiful, she whispered. We talked a little, but it was a start. Not full reconciliation, but a door cracked open. George sent checks occasionally, practical gestures from a man, a few words. Lisa faded further, her life a series of social media glimpses, parties, travels, but hollow somehow. I returned to teaching in the fall, part-time at first, the classroom a familiar haven, children's laughter, the scratch of crayons on paper, the smell of glue and fresh books. It grounded me. Colleagues welcomed me back with hugs and stories, no prying questions. Parents nodded knowingly in conferences, offering quiet support. My days found rhythm. Mornings with Grace's gummy smiles and babbling. Afternoons shaping young minds. Evenings with books or walks. The stroller wheels humming on sidewalks. Friends became family anew. Rachel hosted dinners, her table laden with pasta and wine for her. Sparkling for Mitha, conversations flowing deep into the night. Old acquaintances re-emerged, invitations to book clubs or yoga classes. I even dated once or twice. Casual coffees that reminded me I was whole on my own. Therapy continued. A weekly anchor where I unpacked layers, the trust shattered, the strength unearthed. You've rebuilt from the foundation, my therapist said, her voice gentle. I believe it now. Grace grew, her first steps on a sunny afternoon, tiny hands grasping my fingers. Watching her, I reflected on the journey, the betrayal that cracked me open, forcing growth in the fissures. I learned that family isn't blood or vows alone, but choices, kindness, resilience. The laughter at that party echoed fainter now. A lesson in discernment. Surround yourself with those who lift, not those who revel in falls and quiet moments. I'd journal by lamplight, the pen's soft scratch as a companion. Pain shapes us, I wrote, but love true, steadfast love heals. Grace's breath, even in sleep, the world outside humming with possibility. I was healing, not healed. But moving forward with Grace. And so, my dear, here I am today sitting in that same rocking chair by the window. Grace asleep in my arms, her little breaths soft and even against my chest. The Christmas lights outside twinkle gently now, not mocking but kind. The tree in the corner is small, chosen by us together last weekend, decorated with handmade ornaments and memories we're building on our own terms. There's no laughter echoing like broken glass anymore, only quiet joy. I learned something profound through all of this pain. Betrayal doesn't define you. How you rise from it does. I could have let bitterness take root, could have fought dirtier, louder, but I chose dignity. I chose truth spoken calmly. I chose to protect my heart and my daughter's future without destroying anyone else's in return. And in that choice, I found a strength I never knew I had. Family isn't always the people who share your blood or your last name. Sometimes it's the sister who holds your hand through the storm. The friends who show up with soup and silence. The tiny soul who looks at you like you're her whole world. That's the family worth keeping. So if you're watching this tonight, carrying your own hurt, whether it's fresh or years old, know the story isn't over when someone wounds you. It's just beginning again. In your hands, would you have signed those papers at that moment, surrounded by laughter? Or would you have walked out unsigned and fought from the start? And more importantly, would you have found a way to forgive, not for them, but for your own peace? Tell me gently in the comments. My love, we're all healing together. Until next time, take care of your hearts.